Good morning, everyone. Today, I would like to talk about a theme that shapes the world we live in: globalization and identity. As countries become more connected through trade, travel, and technology, our daily lives are influenced by cultures far beyond our own. But this brings both opportunities and challenges. On the one hand, globalization gives us access to diversity. We can listen to music from Korea, watch movies from Hollywood, taste food from India, and learn new ideas from across the globe. These influences can inspire us, broaden our minds, and make us feel part of something larger than just our own country. For young people especially, globalization can feel exciting. It allows us to build identities that connect with global communities. On the other hand, globalization can also create homogenization. When we walk into shopping malls in different countries, we often see the same brands, the same restaurants, and even hear the same songs. Local traditions, languages, and crafts can fade when global trends dominate. In some cases, globalization makes the world more convenient, but also more uniform. And this raises a serious question. Are we losing our unique identities in exchange for a global lifestyle? Let's take language as an example. English has become a global language, and it helps people from different nations communicate. But at the same time, many smaller languages are disappearing. When a language disappears, we lose not just words, but also history, culture, and a unique way of seeing the world. Should we allow this, just for the sake of easier communication? Music is another example. Thanks to the internet, local music genres such as K-pop or Afrobeats have become global hits. This shows how globalization can amplify diversity. But algorithms often promote only the most popular songs, and many local musicians are pushed aside. Once again, globalization carries both promise and risk. So, how should we think about identity in this global age? Some people believe identity is something we can freely choose. We can mix and match from the global menu, Ashion from one place, music from another, ideas from yet another. This freedom feels empowering. But others argue that identity is also inherited. It comes from our traditions, our languages, and our communities. If we forget or abandon these, we lose something not only for ourselves, but also for future generations. I believe the real challenge is balance. We should welcome the opportunities of globalization while also protecting what makes us unique. Governments can play a role by supporting local languages, arts, and traditions. But individuals also have responsibility. Each time we choose what to watch, eat, or share online, we shape the cultural landscape. In the end, globalization is not simply good or bad. It is a reality we must navigate. It can connect us, inspire us, and give us freedom. But it can also threaten diversity and weaken identity. The future depends on how we balance these forces. So let us ask ourselves, do we want a world where every city looks the same? Or do we want a world where cultural differences survive and flourish? The answer may depend on the choices we make today. Thank you.
All right, listeners, tonight we are not just mixing tracks. We are mixing cultures, identities, and the rhythms of the world. The set is called Globalization and Identity. And the beat we are tracking is this. As the world becomes more connected, do we move toward a single uniform sound, or do we celebrate the remix of diversity? Let's drop the first beat. Globalization itself. Flights connect cities in hours. The internet collapses distance in seconds. Music, fashion, food, and memes flow across borders faster than ever before. What happens in one corner of the world can go viral in another before the night is over. Globalization is the ultimate crossfade, blending local into global, turning street sounds into mainstream hits, bringing faraway voices into your headphones. Now let's bring in the baseline, homogenization. As the global beat gets louder, some say everything starts to sound the same. Walk through shopping malls in Tokyo, Paris, or New York. You'll see the same brands, the same logos, the same playlists pumping through the speakers. Social media spreads trends like wildfire, and suddenly millions are dancing the same TikTok routine. It feels smooth, but also a little repetitive, like the same track looping over and over. So the question is, are we losing our local rhythms in exchange for a global anthem? But here comes the counter melody, diversity. Globalization doesn't only flatten, it also amplifies. A singer from Lagos can reach fans in Berlin. A chef from Seoul can inspire menus in Buenos Aires. Indigenous crafts, once hidden, can find new life on global marketplaces. When cultures collide, they don't always blend into sameness. They can spark fusion, new genres, unexpected remixes. Think of reggaeton, K-pop, Afrobeats, born in specific places, but now global hits, carrying local identity into the world stage. The drop gets heavier when we ask, what happens to identity? For some, globalization feels liberating. You can be part of a global tribe, connect with people who share your interests no matter where they live. But for others, it feels like erosion. Traditions, languages, and rituals can fade when global culture dominates. It's like a DJ set where the headliners drown out the opening acts. The smaller, local voices risk being silenced. So identity hangs in the balance. Do we blend in, or do we hold tight to what makes us unique? Let's not forget the role of power. Globalization is not an equal exchange. Some cultures export more than others. Hollywood movies, Western fashion, and English dominate global flows. It can feel less like a remix and more like one DJ taking over the whole set, while the rest just follow the beat. This raises a tough question. Is globalization really mutual sharing, or is it cultural dominance dressed up as connection? Now let's bridge to the dance floor of everyday life. Look at your playlist. Maybe it's global, mixing Latin beats, Japanese city pop, American hip-hop. That's the upside, choice and variety. But look at your language apps, your fast food options, your fashion feed. How many of them come from the same few players? That's the downside, uniformity creeping in. Our daily lives are the remix zone, where global and local meet. So what's the outro? Globalization is not one single track. It's a massive playlist. Some songs dominate, but others break through. The risk is homogenization. The promise is diversity. The challenge is balance. Here's the hook I'll leave you with. Identity is like a personal beat. Globalization can amplify it, remix it, or drown it out. The choice is not whether globalization happens, it already has. The choice is whether we keep the dance floor open to many voices or let one rhythm rule them all. That's tonight's set. Stay true to your rhythm, respect the beats of others, and remember, diversity keeps the music alive. Catch me on the next.
Let us begin with a question. When you walk through a shopping mall in Tokyo, Paris, or Sao Paulo, why does it so often feel the same? The same coffee chains, the same fast fashion brands, the same global music playing in the background. This is one face of globalization, the homogenization of culture. But is this the price we pay for connection, or is there another story to tell? Globalization is often described in economic terms: trade agreements, supply chains, international finance. But behind the flow of goods and capital lies another story, the flow of culture and identity. And this story raises moral questions that cannot be answered by economics alone. On the one hand, globalization brings diversity into our daily lives. A teenager in Boston listens to K-pop from Seoul. A chef in Nairobi learns new techniques from Paris. A student in Buenos Aires joins an online community to study Japanese anime. Cultures that were once local now travel across the world in seconds. For many, this is liberation, the ability to choose, to explore, to form identities that reach beyond national borders. On the other hand, globalization can flatten difference. Languages disappear at alarming rates. Local crafts vanish when mass-produced goods dominate the market. Rituals and traditions weaken when global trends overwhelm them. Here lies the paradox. Globalization promises diversity, but often produces uniformity. So the question is, how do we embrace connection without losing identity? Consider language. Today, English is the global lingua franca. It allows people from different nations to communicate, to collaborate, to share ideas. Yet when English dominates, smaller languages fade. UNESCO warns that nearly half of the world, 7,000 languages, may disappear by the end of this century. With each language lost, we lose not only words, but a way of seeing the world. Is the convenience of one common language worth the silence of so many others? Or consider music. Global platforms like Spotify spread music across continents. A Nigerian artist can now reach millions in Europe or Asia. That is a triumph of access. But at the same time, algorithms often push the same handful of global hits. Local musicians may struggle to be heard in their own communities, drowned out by the global playlist. So, globalization creates both opportunity and threat, exposure and erasure. This tension raises a deeper moral question. What do we owe to our cultural roots? If I grow up in a society shaped by certain traditions, do I have an obligation to preserve them? Or am I free to choose my identity without reference to the past? Some would say freedom requires choice, that we should be able to select from the global menu without constraint. But others argue that identity is not simply chosen, it is inherited. To abandon our cultural roots is not only to lose them for ourselves, but also to deprive future generations of the richness of diversity. Here, globalization tests the balance between freedom and responsibility. Freedom to connect, to explore, to reinvent ourselves. Responsibility to sustain the voices of the past, the traditions of our communities, the dignity of difference. Power also plays a role. Globalization is not a neutral exchange. Some cultures dominate the global flow more than others. Hollywood films reach every corner of the world, but how many indigenous films make it to Hollywood? English shapes the internet, but how many online platforms support minority languages? When power is unequal, globalization risks becoming cultural dominance rather than mutual sharing. And this forces us to ask, is globalization fair, or does it simply export the values of the powerful? Let us bring this down to the personal level. Imagine two students, one from a small rural community, another from a global city. The rural student watches Hollywood movies, eats at fast food chains, learns English, and dreams of studying abroad. But gradually, her own dialect fades, her village customs seem old-fashioned, and her identity shifts toward a global mainstream. The city student, meanwhile, enjoys international diversity. Sushi on Monday, tacos on Tuesday, Afrobeats on Friday night. For him, globalization is abundance. Whose experience is closer to the truth? Perhaps both. For some, globalization is opportunity. For others, it is loss. So what should we do? Some propose strict protection of local culture, quotas for domestic films, subsidies for traditional crafts, requirements for language education. These measures may preserve diversity, but they can also feel restrictive, limiting freedom of choice. Others argue that culture should be left to the free market. If people prefer global brands and global music, so be it. But does that approach undervalue what is lost? Things that the market cannot price, like belonging, meaning, and heritage. Here is where philosophy enters. The question is not only economic but moral. What kind of world do we want to inhabit? Do we want a world where every city looks the same, or one where difference survives? Do you value diversity as a collective good, worth protecting even when individuals might prefer the convenience of sameness? John Stuart Mill argued that individuality is essential to human flourishing. Cultural difference, like personal difference, enriches the human experience. From this perspective, protecting diversity is not simply nostalgia. It's part of what makes freedom meaningful. But there is also the Kantian view that we should treat every culture as an end in itself, not merely as a means to entertainment or profit. To let a culture vanish under global pressure is to fail in respect. And yet we cannot escape the reality of interconnection. We cannot roll back globalization. The question is not whether it happens, but how we shape it. Do we allow it to become homogenization, or do we use it as a chance to sustain and share diversity? So I leave you with this challenge. When you choose what to watch, what to eat, what to share online, you are not only expressing personal taste, you are also shaping the cultural landscape for others. Each choice is part of a larger remix of identity and diversity. The moral challenge of globalization is this: can we honor our freedom to connect, while also carrying the responsibility to preserve difference? If we can, globalization will not be the flattening of culture into sameness. It will be the celebration of diversity across borders. That is the hope, and also the task before us.